Okay, we have the human nervous system here. We have three different types of neurons in our book, and this is the unipolar neuron. Okay, it has the dendrites up here, dendritic tree. It comes down, and it's called a unipolar neuron because it has one process right here. One process to the cell body or soma, so it's uni meaning one. Okay, so then it comes down the axon here. So neurons have three different parts. They have dendrites. They can have more than one dendrite. Electrical impulse. Say you have a stimulus. It sets off electrical impulse. It only goes in one direction. In this case, from the dendrites and down. Then it goes into the cell body or soma. So it sets up an electrical potential. Then out. Then down. It only goes one direction. Down the axon. Then it has these synaptic knobs. See that? Each one of these are synaptic knobs, are neurotransmitter chemicals in there. And that synaptic impulse, which is really an electrical impulse, the neurotransmitters jump across the synapse, which is the space. And these synaptic knobs are hooked up to three different things. Another neuron, like in your brain, a gland, like the pancreas, or a muscle to innervate it, to move. Okay? So that's unipolar neuron. Okay, here is a bipolar neuron right here. Only found in the retina of your eye. Helps you see. So here's the dendrite. Electrical impulse goes, in this case, from the dendrite to the cell body or soma. It is the axon hillock to the axon. They're very short neurons, only found in the eye. The unipolar neurons are found in the peripheral senses, like your five senses. That's what they control, your five senses peripherally. Okay, and like I said, that's a bipolar neuron only found in your eyeball, in the retina of your eye. Okay, here's an example of a bipolar neuron. If it has, look, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dendrites off the cell body or soma, so it's a multipolar neuron. And here's the axon hillock right here forming the axon. Okay? Multipolar neurons are found in your central nervous system, which is your brain and spinal cord, and peripheral motors. Motors means movement of muscles, so they control your muscles, all those 600 muscles. Okay, in this case, electrical impulse will go from the dendrites into the cell body or soma, down the axon to the synaptic knobs here. Okay, the synaptic knobs hold the neurotransmitters. They jump across the synapse, which is the space, to the next cell, next neuron, muscle cell, or a gland like the pancreas. This multipolar neuron happens to be a myelinated one. See, peripheral nervous system, the Schwann cells come up here while you are a fetus, and they start wrapping for 20 years. At the end of adolescence, they'll stop wrapping. It forms this myelin sheath right here. So it's for speed of electrical impulse and protection, but it's not a perfect system. You see this little space right here? Nodes or Ranvier. See, these are Schwann cells. If this was in your brain, your central nervous system, it'd be called oligodendrocyte cells. Okay? So let's take a look at this multipolar neuron here. So this, we know it's a multipolar neuron because it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dendrites off the cell body, and it's branched out here. So electrical impulse goes from the dendrites to the cell body, down. All of them have just one axon. And this happens to be a myelinated axon. It's a Schwann cell because I know it's a peripheral nervous system. Okay, these Schwann cells wrap for 20 years. Here's the nodes of Ranvier, the little spaces. Okay, they come down. Electrical impulses goes down, hits the synaptic knobs here, the neurotransmitters in there, jumps across a space called a synaptic cleft or a synapse to the next cell. So that happens to be a Schwann cell, so it's a peripheral nervous system. If this was the central nervous system, it'd be oligodendrocyte cells. Okay? Just remember, Schwann cells in the peripheral nervous system which is everything but the central nervous system. And oligodendrocytes are myelinated cells in the central nervous system. Okay, we have nerves, peripheral nerves all over the body. Take a look at this. Here'd be an example of the sciatic nerve. You see inside here is, inside these, we have 24 vertebral foramen. See that hole there? The spinal cord runs through there. And out of these holes, see these foramen where the pencil's going through? And the green there, that'd be like the example of the sciatic nerve. So we go from the central nervous system, which is the brain and spinal cord, to these peripheral nerves coming out here. And the sciatic nerve runs to sacrum hole number 3 and down your leg. So that's the example of peripheral nerves. We go from the spinal cord peripherally to the spinal nerves. We've got 31 pairs of spinal nerves going right and left. Okay, here's an example of a spinal nerve. It looks just like a muscle. The outer layer is epineurum, and it's a connective tissue. Okay, each nerve, say this is sciatic nerve, they have these fascicles, so that would be the fascicle here. Looks like there's about 8 or 9 fascicles. Inside the fascicle are the neurons. This would be the axon of the neuron. There's only axons in nerves. That's the only thing that's in a nerve, are the axons. Okay, they can be myelinated or unmyelinated. Okay, so that's our nerve. It looks very much like our muscles. Okay, we have three layers just like the muscle. Epineurum, perineurum around the fascicle, and endoneurum around each axon. It can be myelinated or not. And if it's myelinated, it's formed this myelin sheath for protection that we saw. See, here's the myelin sheath. In this case, it would be a Schwann cell. Okay, here's an example of the spinal cord. Okay, the butterfly-looking gray area is called the gray matter, and everything else, the pink area, is called the white matter. Okay, we have meninges around our brain and spinal cord. The meninges, you'll see it around the sheep brain and our spinal cord. The meninges has 3 layers. The dura mater, the blue is the arachnoid layer, and the pia mater adheres right to the spinal cord. Okay? Underneath the arachnoid layer, here's arachnoid space. It's filled with cerebral spinal fluid. Okay? And that little hole right there is filled with cerebral, the central canal, it's filled with cerebral spinal fluid too. So that's our meninges. Dura mater, arachnoid layer, and pia mater. Okay, look. Here's these 31 pairs of spinal nerves coming off your spinal cord. Okay, the back is, they call it dorsal. So, here's the dorsal root. Look, you got to know the dorsal root only has senses, your 5 senses, axons. Dorsal root ganglion here only has sensory somas in there. Okay? Sensory somas. Then your dorsal ramus comes back around here to innervate the muscles in your neck and back. Okay, so that's the dorsal. That's dorsal, and here's ventral. Ventral controls your, this area right here. It controls your motor movements. So your 5 senses are controlled in the back, and your ventral is controlled muscle movements. Okay, here's a sagittal cut of a brain, a human brain, and here's the model of it right here. Look, the cerebral cortex, see the purplish blue area? That's called the cerebral cortex. It's 2 to 4 millimeters thick. When you hear area or cortex, that's the cerebral cortex. It controls muscle movements, your 5 senses, your thoughts, your emotions up front here, the prefrontal lobe. Okay? So, Here's a sagittal cut, mid-sagittal cut of a brain here. You got your spinal cord coming up to the brain stem here. So the first part of the brain stem is the medulla oblongata. You see this little round part is the pons. So look, number 22 here, that'd be the pons. The medulla oblongata, the pons, then the midbrain here. So let's go over that again. Spinal cord runs into the medulla oblongata of the brainstem. Then we got the round thing is the pons, then the midbrain. Okay. Look, the brainstem here, medulla oblongata, controls your respiration and cardiovascular systems. So it's very important. The pons controls the respiratory system. It's also a control center between the cerebellum here and the cerebrum. So the little bitty brain in the back is called the cerebellum, and this is the cerebrum, the big one. Okay. The midbrain here of the brainstem, it controls a control center between the brainstem and the cerebrum here. It's also a control center between hearing and seeing reflex systems. Okay? Now look, we have three diencephalons right in the middle of our brain. Okay, look, here's the pineal gland. It's controlled by the epithalamus. The epithalamus is a pineal gland. It controls the pineal gland. The pineal gland makes a hormone called melatonin, and it regulates our day-night cycle. So normal people like to sleep at night, wake during the day. Okay? The thalamus is in this area right here. The thalamus, it's a diencephalon. It's a control center. It sends control reflexes to the cerebral cortex to control our motors, which is our muscle, and our senses. It's just a control center. And the hypothalamus is in this area right here. That's the pituitary. It controls the pituitary gland too. So the hypothalamus controls a lot of things. Hunger and thirst. So emotional center. It controls heartbeat, blood pressure. So, like I said, emotions. Just a huge control center, and it's a diencephalon. Okay. Look, like I said, look, here's a cerebral cortex. There's 13 areas of this cerebral cortex that you need to know. You fill in the blank with the red terms, okay? Cerebral cortex is 2 to 4 milliliters, superficial crust of the brain. Okay, look, when we say area, we're talking about this cerebral cortex, 2 to 4 millimeters, outer crust of the brain. Primary somatic sensory right here. It's controlling your touch, your pain, and your temperatures, okay? It feels 72 in here, or you can feel pain with it. That's the part of the brain. This area right here is gustatory, means we taste. You've got 2 gustatory centers on each side of the brain. So gustatory is taste. Do you remember what ice cream tastes like? And auditory, around your ear hole here, the temporal lobe. Auditory, hearing. And occipital lobe is vision. So that's your senses. That's your senses, your 5 senses. Okay, here's a sensory sulcus right here. They call it the central sulcus. The pink area is primary motor area of the cerebral cortex, controlling those 600 motor means muscles. It controls, this is the area that controls just the pink area that controls the primary motor here. It's like a choreographer. Which muscle do I put first? Okay. Look, this frontal eye field right here, frontal eye field. We have 6 muscles that move or attach to our sclera of our eyeball and move it around. So this part of the brain right here controls that. 6 muscles that are attached to your sclera to move the eyeball around. Okay, this motor speech area, though, you got to know it's the Broca's area too. It controls muscle movements around the mouth. Orbicularis Oris, this area right here controls speech, muscles. So the frontal area here controls your muscles. Okay, you have association areas. Look at this prefrontal association area here. That's really your soul. And it's right here on this model here. You see just the red area right there. It's a very small area. It controls emotions, your cognitive abilities, your thinking. It's just in the frontal lobe. Okay? Okay. Primary somatic. Here's the primary somatic sensory. But it got your primary somatic sensory association area. Like I said, it's your first sense of touch. Like if somebody put sandpaper on your skin, you would know it's sandpaper. Or if somebody put scissors on your skin, you'd probably know it's metal. You associate the metal with the feel. Okay? Auditory association area. You're hearing me, but what is he talking about? You associate it. And vision, like a star they're talking about there. You see a star, you see it, but you remember it's a five-sided figure. Okay, and then Wernicke's area here. Sensory speech area. So this area right here, the cerebral cortex, young kids learn to speak fast. It's an area that you learn to speak, speech. You associate with speech area. So that's our nervous system. It's very complex.